I'd like to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, peace and safety to the hopefully elect, all the sincere Akim, scattered throughout the four corners, pushing his word in sincerity and in truth. For those who don't know, Yahweh is the name of the Heavenly Father, who the world ignorantly calls God, and Yahushai is the name of the only begotten Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. This is another edition of biblical interpretation. And what I'm going to go into in this edition is the book of Isaiah, chapter 27 and verse 1, dealing with this word Leviathan. In this particular verse, and it says, in that day, the Lord with his sore and great and strong sword shall punish Leviathan. Now, we have private interpretations that was brought in by the will of man, teaching that Leviathan is referring to Puff the Magic Dragon, Godzilla, which, like I said, that's a private interpretation. It was brought in by the will of man, the so-called white man, and is also taught amongst the circumcision as the Lord's doctrine. And I'm going to show you through this lesson, through the precepts, what this Leviathan in this specific chapter and verse is referring to. Because we know Leviathan is used in several scriptures in the Bible, dealing with the book of Job, chapter 41, which is dealing with the volcanoes and the lava, which we did a lesson and broke it down through the precepts and gave the edification. But you also have the word Leviathan in other scriptures in the Bible, and it's used in different ways. But concerning the book of Job, chapter 41, the whole chapter, and the book of Isaiah, chapter 27 and verse 1, we know that it's dealing with the fire and the brimstone. So, here in the book of Isaiah, chapter 27 and 1, it says, in that day, the Lord Yahweh with his sword and great and strong sword shall punish Leviathan. Now, you also have another private interpretation that this Leviathan here in the Bible is referring to the nations, all right, which, like I said, in the book of Psalms, I believe, where it spoke of, where it speaks of Leviathan, it's indeed referring to the nations. But in the book of Job, chapter 41, and here in Isaiah 27, it's not referring to the nations, and it's definitely not referring to Godzilla, Puff the Magic Dragon. So it says, the piercing serpent, even Leviathan, that cricket serpent, and he, referring to Leviathan, shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. So now, I want to get another translation, and we're going to compare and show you what that's actually talking about. So let's see which one I want to get. Let's get the NET. It says, at that time, the Lord will punish with his destructive, great and powerful sword, Leviathan. So this is a tool that the Lord is going to use to bring destruction. All right, it's referred to as great and powerful sword, Leviathan, that fast-moving serpent, which the so-called white man interpret that as Godzilla. And like I said, you have guys amongst the circumcision that teach doctrines of devils that also teach that it's referring to Godzilla. So it says Leviathan, that squirmy serpent, he will kill the sea monster, the dragon. And we all know that dragon is referring to the Edomites. All right. So let's see here. Let's get it in the NHEB. It says, in that day the Lord with his fierce and great and mighty sword will punish Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, and Leviathan the twisted serpent, and he will kill the serpent that is in the sea. Now you see how in the NET it tells you that Leviathan is the Lord destructive, great and powerful sword that he's going to use to destroy the sea monster, which is that dragon. Okay, let's see here. Let's see here. Okay, here in the easy English it says, in that day the Lord will punish Leviathan. The Lord will use his sword, and we know his sword is Leviathan. His sword is great, powerful, and strong. Leviathan is a snake that moveth quickly in the sea. It is a snake that puts itself round about. He will kill, referring to Leviathan, the Lord, great and powerful sword, will kill the great sea monster in the sea. And we know that's referring to that dragon. So let's see here. Let's go back. Now, let's read this without any private interpretation and with understanding. It says, in that day, the Lord with his sword and great and strong sword shall punish. And when you look up this word punish here, it says to attend to muster, all right, to appoint. Okay, it says to appoint, to assign. It says to muster, to call up. All right, so it says, in that day the Lord with his sword and great and strong sword will call up Leviathan, the piercing serpent, even Leviathan, that crooked serpent. Now I want to look up this word crooked. And as you can see on your screen, it says torturous. All right, remember the Lord said he's going to torment these nations, man. All right, and part of that torment is the fire and the brimstone. The Lord, great and powerful sword, the same sword that he used to destroy the 5 cities surrounding Sodom and Gomorrah. So let's get some precepts. Go to the book of Revelations, chapter 19 and verse 21. And it says, and the remnant were slain with the sword. All right, so this is the Lord, great and powerful sword. It says, and the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse. Because we know Yahweh Shai is going to return with the destruction. All right, and part of that destruction is the fire and the brimstone, which is the Lord's sword. So it says, and the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse. Now we know this is referring to Yahweh Shai, because when you go to the book of Revelation, chapter 6 and 2, it says, and I saw and behold a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow and a crown, and it was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Okay, so we know when you go back to the book of Revelation, chapter 19, verse 21, and it says, and the remnant was slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse. We know that's referring to him in Revelation 6 and 2, which is Yahweh Shai that's wearing that crown that sat upon the white horse. So it says, which is Yahweh's sword, and it says, with sword proceedeth out of his mouth, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh. So now I want to go to the Apocrypha and show you what that's referring to. So I want to go to the Apocrypha, 2nd Ezra chapter 13, and pick up at verse 9. And it says, "And lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand," and that multitude is referring to Gog and Magog. So it says, "Nor held sword, nor any instrument of war." All right, because the Lord is going to fight with the elements, man. The Lord don't need a literal sword. So this sword that was referred to in Revelation 19 and 21 is not a literal sword. All right, so it says, "Nor any instrument of war, but only I saw that he sent out of his mouth as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks as tempests." All right, and we notice this is referring to the volcanoes, and I'm going to show you that further in the precepts. And it says, read on in verse 11, "And they were all mixed together, the blast of fire and the flaming breath and the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude," and that's that multitude of mountains, meaning those anti-Yahushua governments. All right, those anti-Christian governments. All right, the multitude was prepared to fight and burnt them up, every one, so that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude nothing was to be perceived but only dust and the smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. And this is the vision that the Lord gave to Ezra, man. All right, of that destruction of his sword, great and powerful sword, which is Leviathan. All right, so let's get a precept, because I want to deal with that verse 10. It says, "But only I saw that he sent out of his mouth as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks as tempest." And that's that sword that's referred to. So let's get a precept right quick. In the book of Job. Let's get a precept in the book of Job, chapter 40, chapter 41, dealing with Leviathan. And that's why it says here, "Canst thou draw out Leviathan with a hook, or his tongue with a cord which thou lettest down?" And it says, let's see here. Let's see here. Here in verse 19, it says, Job 41 and 19, "Out of his mouth goeth burning lamps, sparks of fire leap out." All right, so it says, "Out of his mouth go burning lamps, and sparks of fire leap out. Out of his nostril goeth smoke, and out of as out of a seething pot of cauldron, his breath kindleth coals, and a flame goeth out of his mouth." So this is referring to that sword that we just read about in Ezra's chapter 2nd, Ezra chapter 13 and verse 10. It says, "But only I saw that he sent out of his mouth as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out spark and tempest." Because the volcanoes is basically a firestorm, man. All right, it's a tempest, it's a storm, but it's a firestorm. So it says in verse 11, and they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude, Gog and Magog, which were prepared to fight, and burnt them up every one, so that upon the sudden of an innumerable multitude nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and the smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. So that's what it's referring to, and this is the biblical interpretation of Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, chapter 27 and verse 1. So let's go back here to the book of Revelation, chapter 19 and 21. It says, and the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse. And we know that sword is referring to that blast of fire that's going to burn up the multitude, Gog and Magog. Read, knowing which sword proceedeth out of his mouth. All right, like we read in the book of Job. It says, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh. The there is referring to that multitude in 2nd Ezra 13. So now, let's go back to the book of Isaiah, chapter 27. And it says, in that day the Lord with his sword and great and strong sword shall punish, meaning call up Leviathan. Let's get it again. As you can see here, it says muster up, to assign, to appoint. It says, let's see here, to commit, to reckon, to summon, to muster. Let's see here. It says to be called. It says to call up, to muster, to call up. So this is what it's referring to in the book of Isaiah, all right, referring to Leviathan, all right. So it says, shall call up, to muster up, all right. That word punish, Leviathan, that piercing serpent, even Leviathan, that cricket, that torturous serpent, and he shall slay the dragon, all right, that innumerable multitude, all right. And I'm going to prove that further in this lesson. Gog and Magog, all right, that's the dragon that is in the sea. So now let's get another precept. Stay in the book of Isaiah, chapter 34, and verse 5 and 6. And it says, for my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea. All right, that's that dragon. All right, the Edomites, the so-called white man, Idumea. All right, and we know this not referring to a literal sword. Going back to 2nd Ezra 13 and verse 9, he hold no weapons of war. All right, he had no literal weapon, but his weapon are the elements, man. All right. So as you can see here on your screen, it says Edom, the so-called white man. All right, and that's the dragon. All right, that's referred to in Isaiah 27. That Leviathan is going to torture. All right, it's going to pierce. All right, so it says, and upon the people of my curse to judgment, verse 6, the sword of the Lord is filled with blood. It is made fat with fatness, and with the blood of lambs and goats, and with fat of kidney of rams. For the Lord have a sacrifice in Basra, all right, on the Idumeans, all right, and a great slaughter in the land of Idumea, all right, upon the Edomites, and that's your dragon. Now let's prove that further. The book of Revelations, chapter 12 and verse 7, and it says, and there was war in heaven. And that's what we was reading in 2nd Ezra chapter 13. All right. So there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and his angels. All right, that's that innumerable multitude. All right, that the Lord destroyed in the book of Ezra. That's the same dragon, that Leviathan. All right, that the Lord referred to as his great sword, his great and powerful sword, Leviathan. All right. So it says, and there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, Gog and Magog, that multitude, and that's what it's referring to. So it says, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon, that's referred to in the book of Isaiah, was cast out. That old serpent called the devil, the Idumeans, all right, the Edomites, which and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. And that's what the word devil means, deceiver. All right, and the so-called white man, aka the Idumeans, have deceived the whole world. All right, so it said he was cast out into the earth, and his angels was cast out with him. All right, so that's the dragon that's referred to in the book of Isaiah chapter 27. Now let's get another precept and prove that even further. The book of Psalms chapter 11 and verse 6. And it reads, upon the wicked he shall rain snares, fire, and brimstone. All right, going back to that Leviathan. All right, that blast of fire that came out of the Lord's mouth, referred to as a sword. All right, so it says, upon the wicked he shall rain snares, fire, and brimstone, and a horrible tempest. All right, that firestorm. All right, this shall be the portion of their cup, referring to that dragon. All right, that innumerable multitude, Gog and Magog. All right, let's prove it further in the book of Ezekiel. Like I say, you have many private interpretations of what this Leviathan is referring to. So this is the book of Ezekiel chapter 38 and verse 22. Dealing with that innumerable multitude. So it says, and I will plead against him with pestilence and with blood, and I will rain upon them, upon him, Salakia, and upon his bands, and upon the many people that are with him, that innumerable multitude, and overflowing rain, and great hailstones, fire and brimstone. All right, referring to Leviathan, the piercing serpent. All right, the Lord's great and powerful sword. All right, so now let's go back to the book of Isaiah, chapter 27 and verse 4, and prove that even further. So it says, fury is not in me. Who would set the briars and thorns against me in battle? And that's what it's referring to in Job. When it's referring to Leviathan, like I said, that whole chapter is referring to Leviathan, the piercing serpent, which are the volcanoes. All right, because when you look up this word Leviathan, and as you can see on your screen in here, it says sea monster, and that's the way the so-called white man, the Idumeans, the devil that deceives the whole world in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, that we just read about in verse 9. This is his interpretation of it. But when you go to the origin of this word, and as you can see on your screen, it says lava. All right, it says lava. Okay, and that's what it's referring to, man. All right, this is what the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah with. The Lord always used the elements. Going back to the time of Noah, he brought down the Egyptians. He destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah the same way. And when you read the book of Luke, the prophecy says that he's going to in like manner, meaning in the same way, he's going to destroy this current kingdom, referring to the Edomites, all right, the Idumeans, that dragon. So it says, verse 4, for fury is not in me, who would set the briars and thorns, and the briars and thorns are referring to the nations. We can prove that with a precept. It's there in the book of Isaiah, chapter 10, and verse 17, to prove that those thorns and briars is referring to the heathens, to the nations. It says, and the light of Israel shall be for a fire, and his Holy One for a flame, and it shall burn and devour the thorns and briars in one day. All right, so the thorns and briars is referring to the nations. And let's get another precept in the book of Hebrews, chapter 6 and verse 8. It says, but that which beareth thorns and briars is rejected, and is nigh unto cursing, whose end is to be burnt. All right, so what that's referring to, let's see here. Now, here in Isaiah chapter 27 and verse 4 says, fury is not in me, who would set the briars and thorns against me in battle. I will go through them. The Lord say will go through them with that great sword, which is mainly referring to Yahweh Shai, giving the commandments to the four angels, to the host, the Lord armies, to bring that destruction. So it says, I will go through them, I will burn them together. All right, referring to Ezekiel 38:22. All right, Gog and Magog, that innumerable multitude in 2nd Ezra 13. So now let's get one last precept in the book of Revelations, chapter 19 and verse 20. And it says, and the beast was taken, referring to the dragon, and with him the false prophet that worked miracles before him, which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, that dragon referred to in Revelation 12, the devil. And it says, and them that worship his image, these both, referring to Hebrews 6 and 8, those that bear briars and thorns and briars, it says these both was cast alive, those that worship the beast, into a lake of fire. All right, and that lake is a body of water, metaphorically referring to people. All right, that's going to be judged. So it says these both were cast alive into the lake of fire burning with brimstone, referring to Leviathan. And I hope you brothers was edified. And with that, I'm going to say shalom.